Hey guys, BuildZoid here, and this is just going to be first impressions of Asrock's Z590 OC Formula motherboard. Cause yeah, like this is a really cool board. Like it looks cool, and also Asrock's done some really crazy stuff. I started reading the page, and I was like, oh my god, they've gone completely insane. And so that's why we're doing this video. Is just like I'm a huge fan of motherboards where the vendor where the manufacturer is just like, we are going to do everything, not just most of the necessary things for overclocking, everything for overclocking. So yeah. Anyway, and I gotta say, like the OC formulas, I like them. I mean, I have an X299 OC formula, and the VRM on that thing does freeze out, unfortunately. But other than that, it's been a great board. So yeah, anyway, let's take a look at this thing. This is probably going to end up being the only Z590 motherboard that I end up buying, because Gigabyte already sent me over the Tachyon. I expect MSI to send over a Unify X whenever they finish designing it, or whenever they decide to do that. The Maximus 13 Apex, I already have a 12, so I don't know that there'd be that much of a difference between the 12 and the 13, and so I'm just kind of like, eh. But anyway, this right here, it's like, finally we have an OC formula. The last one Asrock's released was for X299, so it's been a long time since they've made one of these, and I'm really excited, because these boards are just, like, they're awesome. They're just super freaking awesome. Though, I have to say, I'm not a fan of that postcode location. Like, you have all the overclocking functionality up here, and then your postcode's over there. It's like, your GPU goes down the middle of the motherboard. Like, also, if you have a triple slot, or actually, I think there's now four slot, a couple four slot cards out there. Like, yeah, if you have two GPUs, like, you're not gonna see that. You're not gonna see the postcode. So, yeah, I am really not a fan of the postcode being down here, especially when most of the buttons are up there. It's like, at least if you put all your functionality in the same place, then it's like, okay, fine. But it's like, no. Postcode gets to be on the bottom edge, everything else up on the top edge where it should be. And it's just like, oh man. Anyway, for professional use, unlike most so-called overclocking motherboards that are designed by engineers who don't have adequate experience in extreme overclocking or have never participated in an OC event, the Z590 OC formula is the only motherboard in the market that are designed by a genuine overclocker, Nick Shi, who is hands down one of the most talented overclockers alive. I won't. Well, High Cookie from Gigabyte. Actually, Gigabyte regularly did overclocking events, and High Cookie works on like the OC series for Gigabyte and other boards. Um, MSI used to do MSI overclocking arenas, which were like, I think that was actually the biggest overclocking event for a couple years, was the MSI OC arena. And I don't think Asus also did overclocking events. So I don't really think this statement is very fair to the other vendors, cuz um yeah, like, I think the only vendor that hasn't like consistently put, I'd say like EVGA is the only one where you could say they never did overclocking events, but then it's like, I think Kingpin did overclocking events way back in the day, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, this right here, I'm not sure who they're referring to unless it's BioStar. That is like the only manufacturer I can think of where it's like, I don't think they've ever done like an extreme overclocking event. So I don't think this is a very fair statement. Um, anyway, higher and higher speed using only specially selected performance components. The mass. Eh, let's not bother reading too. Yeah, screw the marketing stuff. So the first thing that blew me away was like, wait, 12 layers? Are they insane? I don't want to know how much this is gonna cost. 12 layers. Like, most of the other extreme overclocking high-end boards are like 8, maybe. EVGA has been sort of like, the darks have had 10-layer PCBs. Um, and then there's Asrock where, or well, the mainstream darks. So like the X299 dark, the Z390, Z490, I don't know what they're doing for the Z590 Dark, but Z490 and Z390 Dark were 10 layer. So Asrock has just kind of decided that they're going to run 12 layers, which I don't know what that's going to achieve, but I hope it works. Like, I'm not sure what specific benefits they're going to be able to get out of that, but because the thing is, as far as I'm aware, there's an upper limit to how many layers you can actually take advantage of. So, it certainly doesn't hurt anything, except like the manufacturing cost. It hurts that. It makes the board way more expensive. Um, but yeah, so I think this is probably the highest layer count motherboard on Z590 at this point. I don't think anybody else is doing 12 layers just because I think it's probably extremely excessive, but hey, maybe maybe Asrock's going to show off memory overclocks that like nobody else is even able Asrock with everything they've done on this board, they might be able to outclock everyone else by like a couple, maybe 100, maybe hundreds of megahertz. Like, I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, that right there is like, yeah, this is not cheap to do. So hopefully it actually has like it's actually effective. Because the funny thing is, historically a lot of the extreme overclocking boards haven't had that many layers. When you look at like the stripped down extreme overclocking boards, because you don't really need that many. So I'm talking like the Apexes from Asus; those are all 6-layer, right? And very, very good boards. And so going with 12 layers, like that is a lot of PCB layers, and it's just like, and then most other and like a lot of the other and other than that, most high-end motherboards have been like 8-layer PCBs. Going above 8 layers is pretty uncommon, and so 12 is really kind of ridiculous in that sense. So that'll be interesting to see if that actually achieves anything, because that's the thing. There's like the reason why like I don't think Asus uses a 6-layer PCB on the Apex because they're trying to cost optimize the board. It's more like I don't think they find it necessary because they have other boards at similar price points with 8 layers, and it's just like but the Apex is a 6. Anyway, or at least the previous Apex was a 6. I don't know if they didn't do more for the Z590. Let's read about the dim slots, because this makes me excited. We've got SMT dim slots. So these, so the first vendor to actually use these was Gigabyte, and they use them on the Z97 SoC LN2 board. Well, actually, even the Z97 mainstream SoC boards, but the main sort of benefit that these showed off was on the Z90 SoC LN2 Force. Which is I think that board still holds the world record for DDR3 memory frequency. And apparently apparently part of that was like the SMT dim slots, because the SMT dim slots basically have better parasitics due to just having smaller pins, essentially. So, yeah, Asrock's not the only ones to be using these on Z590, but I think they're the only. I think MSI is using them on an ITX board, and Asus and Gigabyte are using regular through-hole dim slots. So, this is one of those things, like, this should have an advantage. It'll be interesting to see if we actually see that, if Asrock takes, like, a memory frequency world record or something. I hope they do. Like, it would be really, like, because the thing is, it's just, like, always disappointing when you see a board just that does a lot of really crazy things, and then it ends up like not, and then it ends up like 4th on the world record rankings or something, because that's happened to some boards in the past. And then you also have boards that just nobody really like. There's also boards that like technically should be really good, but nobody really uses them. So it's like, yeah, so there the issue isn't so much like the board is bad, it's just like everybody else is using some other board, so you're going to only see like one of them in the rankings or something. Anyway, so SMT dim slots, that should be good for memory frequency. What else do we have? Right, 90 amp smart power stages. We've seen those 1,000 times before, so that's not really impressive, but hey, they don't hurt anything. Also, Asrock's approach to input filtering is really interesting to me. And I'm not sure. So, and the reason I say that is they don't have an input filtering inductor. They just completely skip the input filtering inductor, and then they just have a whack ton of capacitors, including a whole bunch of tantalums. So yeah, that should work really, really well. And then this is an Intersil VRM. We can actually read the part number over there. That's a 69269 standard controller for Z490 motherboards and Z590 motherboards. It's a good controller. Like in the oscilloscope testing I did on the Z490 boards that I did have with that controller and the doublers, because Asrock's using a bunch of ISL 6617 doublers on this. Like, you couldn't really tell the difference between the boards with the doublers and without the doublers, so that looks nice. Though I wonder if maybe, they might just be stacking PCB layers for lower impedance on the power planes, because you just get more copper to shove your current through to the socket. Like, it might not even be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do something insane with them. Well, I guess they could also like space. There's a lot of things you can do with like that's the reason you see boards go to higher layer counts, is just like you can basically, if you have more layers, you can chain, like, put multiple uh you can potentially isolate the memory traces a lot better, instead of having like if you have a 4-layer motherboard, like a low end one, you'll have basically an entire memory channel on one layer. Um and then you'll have a power layer, and then you'll have a ground layer, and then you'll have the next entire memory channel. With a 12-layer board, like, they could probably they could be, splitting up uh like groups, like parts of the memory channel onto each layer. And actually there's some DDR3 boards where that's done, where you see like a couple traces on the top layers, and then like the rest of them are hiding further down in the PCB. DDR3 boards with like eight-layer PCBs is what I'm referring to with that. Um, yeah, and then also you can just make an absolutely insane power plane with that, I guess. There's a lot of stitching. Like, they have vias everywhere in that power plane. So, oh man, this is... Yeah, I need to get my hands on this board. Like, it's not like, oh, I might be buying this. No, no, no. I am definitely getting one of these. Um, I am definitely getting one of these. This looks like... Yeah, but the VRM itself isn't anything really that special, but the PCB on this thing is insane. Um, so yeah, and this VRM is more than powerful enough to power any CPU that you can fit into the into the LGA 1200 socket. So that's why I'm not really that impressed with it. Is like, we've actually seen basically this exact VRM on Z490, and it was really overkill back then. It's still really overkill now, but hey, cool VRM. Anyway, ooh, they've got voltage read. That has to be, well, actually, I think the MSI one kind of does. I don't know. Well, if this is easy to set up in the BIOS, then it's not a stupid gimmick. If it's a pain to set up, it's a stupid gimmick. That's my approach to that. If this is easy to set up, or if it just defaults to voltage readings, cool. If it doesn't do that, dumb gimmick. Oh man, I am really worried how much this thing is going to cost. Oh, this is the other thing that I was like, oh, I've never even heard of that, but it does make sense. So normally, if you have SMT Dim Slots, you still need to do, you still need to have vias connecting those DIM slots to the traces in the PCB, unless you want to put all of your memory traces onto the top layer, which is like, you've kind of negated the whole point of having a 12-layer PCB by doing that. Normally the top layer, like on top-end DDR4 motherboards these days, I'm not sure if this one's doing it, but most top-end DDR4 motherboards these days, the first layer is dedicated like entirely to shielding the memory traces. Then you get your memory traces, then you get your power, and I think there's more ground down there as well. And then you get the ground fill, and then you get the next channel, so I'm talking like a 6-layer PCB, and then you get more shielding on the back of the board, which is why on a lot of motherboards, especially say B550s and X570s, high-end ones, you can't see of them any of the memory traces, because there's just a bunch of shielding everywhere. But the thing is, if you have the shielding, then you have to put vias from the top layer to the second layer, so that you can actually connect to your memory traces. And technically you can have blind vias. So, like, you wouldn't have to have vias that go all the way through the board, but those, as far as I know, are kind of expensive. But it looks like what Asrock is doing here is that if they have a via that goes all the way through, which is unnecessary because you just need to connect, you just need the via to go from the top, if there's a connection that you're running from layer 1 to layer 2, well, layer 1, layer 2, the via is going to go all the way through the board. So you could like drill. What they're doing here is like drill out the via so that it ends at the layer where it's actually like at the layer that it's actually connecting instead of going all the way through the whole board. And this should have a similar effect to what the SMT Dim Slots do by not having pins, because basically each via is kind of a pin, a much, much smaller pin, but it's still kind of a pin. So back drilling them like this should have similar effects to having SMT Dim Slots, I guess. Again, I don't know how effective it'll actually be in practice, but within my understanding of within my understanding of electronics, this should help with signal integrity and therefore memory overclocking. So yeah, also it's probably expensive as hell to do this, because yeah, you'd have to have you'd have to, well, I don't know how expensive this is, but it probably is pretty expensive, because otherwise you wouldn't it wouldn't be something worth talking about. And also, you do need to take a drill and drill out the vias, which is going to be done by a machine, but that's still time that the machine spends doing this instead of, I guess, that's basically an extra production process. So anyway, this is interesting. So that's interesting. That's cool. And then, of course, we just have the various overclocking functions. So we have OC buttons, and they don't say what exactly those buttons do. So let's check out the manual. If they've posted a manual, did they please tell me they... Oh, well, yes, they have. Okay, let's check out the manual. Oh, man, I'm so excited to see. Also, I gotta say, on Intel motherboards specifically, Asrock's BIOS often has a lot of really helpful, memory tuning tips that you don't really see on a lot of other vendors. Where a lot of other vendors will be like, oh, this time, change this option to configure this timing. Asrock BIOSes will sometimes have information like adjusting this can help with high frequency or that kind of thing. And they'll often, if there's timings that have various relationships, they'll actually mention them as well. So, yeah, Asrock's Intel BIOS is, really, really nice a lot of the time. So, this board should be really, really interesting. Anyway, yay, we've gotten to the buttons. So, let's start going through. Also, rear I/O looks solid. You've got your PS2 ports for Windows XP support. BIOS, flashback, clear CMOS. What's that for? Oh, well, I guess we'll find out. What's 17? BIOS select. Oh, man, that is really cool. That is really cool. That's really clever to put the BIOS switch on the back of the board. Because, if you have a dual BIOS motherboard and then the BIOS switch is internal to the... if you have the board in a case, that is really cool. Oh, man. Why can't they make motherboards like this every generation? Why is it every couple of years, Asrock decides to make a good motherboard? Yeah. I know how a CPU... Oh, they're just not gonna... Evidently, I shouldn't have skipped and read the labels. Oh, no. Okay. Power button, reset button, retry button, safe boot button. Yay! BFG button. Why is it called the BFG button? As far as I'm concerned, this is basically one of the greatest buttons to have on a motherboard, but I'd love to know how they came to the... how that works. How did they come to that abbreviation? Anyway, clear CMOS button, we all know what that does. Plus minus buttons, quickly and easily adjust OC frequency. Okay, so then we have OC profiles. Wait, does this change BCL? Wait. Page 8, number... Is it BCLK or is it just... I guess it's just BCLK then? That's kind of... I mean, being able to just change the BCLK with these is kind of neat, but it would be really cool if you could change the ratios. Profile buttons. Wait. Oh, that's just where they are on the board, yeah. OC profile button for rapid OC. That's a waste of space as far as I'm concerned. Like, I think it would have been a lot better if these were just, like, profiles you could set yourself. And, like, if you could go into the BIOS and change what each of those buttons has as a profile, that I think would have been better. PCIe on off, so if you're running multiple PCIe cards and for whatever reason you don't want to physically remove them, well, you can just switch them on and off. Slow mode switch, very useful on LN2. LN2 mode switch. This makes you look really this makes you look like you know what you're doing if you've never done LN2 before. Depending on how well this is implemented, this makes your life so much easier. So that's awesome. Then we of course have just a BIOS switch, which yeah, no big deal there. And then we have BIOS flashback. So I'd say we have most of the buttons. I'm not sure about the 1, 2, 3 buttons though. Like I feel like they might be a waste of space. Depending on how much function. Quickly load the preset Nixiosi profile. Yeah, these might be a waste of space, depending on how those profiles are set up. Because, like, a lot of the OC profiles that are built into motherboards, especially the extreme overclocking boards, are like profiles that if you don't have a very good kit of RAM, it's not gonna boot. So it's kind of like if that profile sets like if it's yeah, I'm like it depends how they're implemented, but I could see this either being completely bloody useless or actually extremely helpful. And there's like no in between as far as I'm concerned. Like because the thing is like either the profiles are like starting points or because and if they're used as starting points then that's where I think they're really useful because you know, you get a bunch of settings that you might not necessarily know how to set up yourself, or just like you do know how to set them up, but you want to save time, so you can just fire off a profile. That profile preloads a bunch of settings that work really, like, you know, you can work on top of, and that saves you a bunch of time, and that's really helpful. Or these are profiles where, like, this is the stuff. These are the settings Nick Shi uses for setting his for setting world records, and then it's like, yeah, you load up one of those profiles and it ain't gonna boot. So that's not helpful in that scenario, right? Like that's kind of the issue I have with any sort of preset profiles is like either they like again depends how they set them up, and they could always adjust what the profiles are with BIOS updates, I guess. So yeah, so this could be really helpful or really useless. Um, hopefully they go. Well, and the thing is, they have 3 buttons, so I guess they could have like a baseline profile, which is almost guaranteed to work, something slightly more aggressive, and then like insanity mode profile. Or you could also have something like single rank, dual rank, max frequency. You know, lots of different options. I feel like yeah, this really depends on what they do with this. I don't think this is the like you know, safe boot button is still the better button than these 3 right here. Moving on, is there anything else worth... Yeah, BIOS flashback port. Your various post codes. This looks relatively complete. Yeah, Crossfire. No SLI support, I guess. Yeah, SLI is expensive. I think everybody's just kind of ditched SLI to support these days. Right? But this looks like a really cool board. Oh, and this is neat from Asrock that they detail all the different voltages you can control. Hopefully Asrock still has... Like, I think... Well, no, I think Asus VTT-DDR is still reasonably implemented. For some reason, both MSI, Gigabyte, and, like, EVGA decided that VTT-DDR should be an offset voltage, which is just, like... I have no idea how they came to that conclusion. It's really dumb. But Asrock, if I remember correctly, actually just lets you set a VTT DDR voltage, which is like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to freaking work. Because a lot of the time you set VTT DDR to like a fixed value and then you just keep raising VDIM and you don't want to change VTT every time VDIM changes. So... Yeah, this looks like a really solid board. Now the main question is, how much is it gonna cost? I'm scared of that. Because it's like 12 layers. Oh no. 16 phase 90 amps. Yeah, 16 phase VRM with 90 amp smart power stages. Ooh, I wonder if they're running them in synchronized or desynchronized mode for the VRM. Um, oh, also, I should have pointed out, like, oh, wait, no, you can't see it. Wait, do they have a picture of the back of the board? No, just the front. Really, guys? Anyway, there's like a pair of tantalum capacitors that they mashed into the socket on the back. You can kind of see them in some of the pictures. Ooh, they have a backplate. Oh, man, what a stupid website. Okay, so they have a backplate. That looks like a really sturdy backplate. That's nice. Of course, Asrock has fans for the VRM. Um, at least here, it doesn't actually need them. Like, there's other boards from Asrock where it's like, yeah, those fans are actually necessary, but here they definitely are. Oh, we do have a picture, nice picture of the back. Man, that backplate looks very expensive. Like, all of the... Is that 2 pieces? That looks like it might be multiple pieces, which is, like, very concerning from a cost perspective. I don't think that's just a sheet of metal that they've, like, pressed into a shape. Oh, man. But it does, like, as far as backplates go, yeah, this is what it should look like as far as I'm concerned. The main point of these is, like, they just make the board more robust. And you can just about make out the 2 tantalum capacitors that they mashed into the socket. And of course, you can't see any memory traces because 12-layer PCB and shielded, shielding on the top layers. So 2-phase memory power looks like. Not that like in my experience that absolutely does absolutely nothing, but it doesn't hurt anything by having two-phase memory power. That's just kind of a standard thing for Asrock. Wait, how the hell is that fan supposed to get any airflow? Like, there's the bolts. And then where does, like, what? How does that fan work? It's a good thing that fan, like, it's a good thing the VRM on this is so overkill because I'm not sure that fan actually is very effective. Like, I'm not sure that they implemented that fan very well. These are fine. These are completely fine. I don't see a problem with those, but it's like this one, there's a great big freaking metal cover over it. Where does it get air? I wonder if they have details of like what accessories it comes with. No, probably not. Oh, and DDR4 56. Let's check the QVL. Oh, do they have proper support for Rocket Lake? Because some of the Z590 boards kind of ditched Rocket Lake support. Yeah, it looks like this might be one of those as well, to 3600, unless the Comet Lake... Oh, no, their QVL is just not finished. Okay. Right? Yeah, it's just not finished. Anyway, so this is a really exciting motherboard. It's been a long time since we've had an OC formula from Asrock. And this one looks like this looks like the most, like the best one they've ever made. Yeah, I'm totally getting one of these. I'm very scared to find, like, the thing is, I'm looking at this like, okay, so PC, this is not going to be less than $500, but usually once you get an OLED screen on the board, like, what other motherboards have an OLED screen? Godlikes from MSI and Extremes from Asus. Extremes are anywhere between $700 and $1,000 these days, and Godlikes are anywhere between $700 and $1,000 these days. So is this going to be $700 too? Please, no. But the thing is, like, with that layer count, it's like, because the highest layer count board on Z590, well, Z490 was the dark at 10, and that was like a $500 board. I'm really concerned about how much this is going to cost. There goes the budget. There goes the AHOC budget for like the next month. It's like, oh well, bought one Asrock board, no more purchases. I should just go to the gallery again. Last page. Oh no, you can't see. I wanted to see if they had more input filtering capacitors, but we don't get to see that. Oh, that's a shame. Um, this is a really cool board, though. At the same time, it is Asrock, and Asrock doesn't tend to. Oh wait, no, they've recently started doing the Aquas at like $1,000+. Like historically, Asrock would have a very reasonable price for like very feature-heavy motherboards, and then it's like, wait a minute, no, they don't. They make Aquas these days. I still want one. I really hope this isn't like significantly over $500, but it would like I if this was $700, I would not be surprised. If it was $1,000, I'd be very annoyed. Very, very annoyed if this was $1,000. It probably won't be just because it's a two dimmer. So the people who buy like $1,000 motherboards, basically, like if the board has less dim slots, then it's worse. So like hopefully it's not going to end up at that price point. But oh man, now I kind of wish I didn't bash Asrock's motherboards for being terrible so often. Because every so often they make a motherboard like this, and it's like, yeah, well, I guess I'm gonna have to buy this. Because this looks like a really, really cool board. I guess, like, the thing is, if they keep making the other thing is, like, if they make another one for Z690 or, well, yeah, Z690, then I wouldn't, like, the thing I'm worried about is, like, if I don't buy this one, will they just not make another one? Because that's been a thing, like, the OC, well, no, they used to put out, they did a Z77, Z87, Z97, Z170, they didn't do one for Z270, but they did do one for X299. And then they didn't make an OC formula for like 3 generations of Intel motherboards. I might have to pick this one up. I really might have to, because I'm not sure if they will just like stop making them again. Anyway, this thing looks really, really cool. That's it for the video. It's just like Asrock has decided to revive the OC formulas, and I figured, like, I guess now it would only be fair if well, no, the other boards, like, I'm doing a PCB breakdown for the Tachyon, so we don't need to do something like that. And then for the Apex, well, I don't think we need to do something similar for the Apex 13. But anyway, yeah, so that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments or questions down in the comments section below. If you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon. There's also the HOC Teespring store where you can pick up shirts, stickers, posters, the usual YouTuber merch. Both the Patreon and Teespring, there are links in the description for them. Yeah, I really need that support because apparently I'm going to be buying one of these and this thing looks really expensive. So, or I guess if you don't really want to, if you don't care about Z590, you don't have to support me. But yeah, in the near future, the budget is going straight into one of these because it's been a long time since we've had a proper overclocking motherboard from Asrock. So, yeah, anyway, that's it for the video, or more like a proper overclocking motherboard from Asrock that you could buy as a general consumer, because they've had internal OC formulas that they just wouldn't release, and it's just like, guys, that's not okay. You can't keep all the good boards to yourselves. Anyway, yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.